The knife scraped against porcelain, slicing through steak that cost more than most people earned in a day. Declan Rourke sat alone at the corner table, his white suit spotless against the afternoon sun filtering through the cafe parasols. Around him, Willow Street hummed with the casual rhythm of wealth. Polished silverware clinking, violin strings humming from hidden speakers, couples laughing over champagne they'd never finish. He lifted the wine glass, swirled it once, set it down without drinking. The steak cooled on his plate, untouched, perfect medium rare, garnished with rosemary he'd never tasted. He wasn't hungry, hadn't been hungry in months. But eating alone in expensive places had become his Thursday ritual, a way to fill time that stretched too long between boardroom meetings and empty hallways at home. A shadow fell across his table. Two small figures stood at the edge of his peripheral vision, bare feet on cobblestone, dresses the color of old dishwater frayed at the hems. The taller one clutched something wrapped in white cloth against her chest like it might disappear if she let go. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Sir, the voice barely rose above the violin music. May I have your leftovers? Declan's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. He turned slowly, the way men turn when interrupted during private moments they'd rather keep sacred. The girl couldn't have been older than 6. Her sister stood half-hidden behind her, eyes wide and unblinking, tracking his every movement. The cafe went silent, not the comfortable silence of contentment, but the heavy kind, the kind that pressed down on shoulders and made necks crane. 3 tables over, a woman in pearls whispered something to her husband. The waiter near the entrance froze mid-step, tray balanced on one palm, clearly unsure whether to intervene or pretend he hadn't noticed. Where are your parents? Declan's voice came out harder than he intended. They're gone, sir. The taller girl's chin lifted slightly, trying for dignity she was too young to understand. We just want a little food. Please. The smaller one shifted, and the white cloth bundle moved with her. Something about the way she held it, protective, reverent, made Declan's chest tighten. He didn't want to feel anything. Hadn't let himself feel anything in 4 years, not since the night police officers stood on his porch with rain dripping from their caps, telling him his wife wouldn't be coming home. He gestured sharply to the waiter. Get them something from the back. The girls nodded, backing away with the careful politeness of children who'd learned early that gratitude bought a few extra seconds of tolerance. They were almost to the alley beside the cafe when the smaller one glanced back over her shoulder. Her lips moved, barely audible over the resumed chatter of the other diners. Mom said people with full plates shouldn't have empty hearts. Declan's hand tightened around his fork, the metal bit into his palm. Something hot and unwelcome clawed up his throat. Memory, maybe, or the ghost of a lesson he'd buried alongside his wife. Raina used to say things like that, used to press her hand over his heart and remind him that success meant nothing if it made him hollow. He stared at his plate. The steak had gone cold. 3 tables over. Laughter erupted, sharp, mocking, the kind that cut through good manners and exposed the rot underneath. The men in suits leaned back in their chairs, faces flushed with wine and self-satisfaction. Typical, one of them said, loud enough to carry. Teach them early. Beg today, steal tomorrow. His companions nodded, chuckling into their glasses like they'd just told the funniest joke of the afternoon. Declan knew that tone, had heard it before in the voice of a police detective who explained, with clinical detachment, why the drunk driver who killed Raina would walk free. Why the son of a wealthy developer deserved a second chance. Why money bought forgiveness faster than justice ever could. He pushed his chair back. The scrape of wood against stone cut through the cafe, noise like a gunshot. The waiter approached cautiously, holding a small takeout box. Sir, keep it. Declan dropped $300 bills on the table without counting. I'm done. He walked past the waiter, past the whispering couples, past the men in suits who'd already forgotten the words they'd thrown like stones. His shoes clicked against cobblestone as he rounded the corner into the alley behind the cafe. The girls sat on the curb, legs dangling over the gutter. They'd opened the box carefully, reverently, like unwrapping a gift on Christmas morning. The steak lay between them, cut into careful pieces with the plastic knife the kitchen had provided. They took turns, one bite each, smiling at each other between chews. The white cloth rested beside them. In the alley shadows, Declan could see it more clearly now, something small tucked inside the folds. Not a doll. Too still. Too precious. He stood there, frozen in his perfect white suit, watching two little girls share a meal they'd begged for, watching them smile like they'd won the lottery. The taller one looked up, saw him. Her face didn't show fear, just a quiet acceptance, like she'd grown used to adults appearing and disappearing without warning. "We can share, sir," she said softly. "If you're hungry too." Something inside Declan cracked. Not broke. Breaking would have been merciful. This was slower, deeper, the kind of fracture that started in your chest and spread through your ribs until breathing hurt. He crouched down slowly, knees protesting against the cobblestone. Up close, he could see the dirt under their fingernails, the hollows beneath their cheekbones, the way their dresses hung loose on frames that should have carried more weight. "What's your name? Would you have stopped? Or would you have kept walking?" "I'm Kemi." The taller girl spoke first, then gestured to her sister. "That's Kaya." Kaya said nothing, just watched him with eyes that held too much understanding for someone so small. Her hand rested on the white cloth, fingers curled protectively around whatever lay hidden inside. Declan's throat felt tight, and he nodded toward the bundle. Kemi's face shifted, not quite sad, not quite proud. Something in between that children shouldn't have to carry. "Our baby brother. He didn't make it." The words hit like a fist to the sternum. Declan's vision blurred at the edges. He blinked hard, forcing focus, but the alley seemed to tilt. Behind him, the cafe noise continued. Laughter, silverware, the violin still playing its oblivious melody. "Your mother." His voice cracked. He cleared his throat. Tried again. "Where is she?" "She got sick last week." Kaya spoke for the first time, her voice smaller than her sister's, but steadier. "We tried to wake her up, but she wouldn't." 5 minutes ago, Declan had been sitting at a table, annoyed by the interruption to his carefully constructed isolation. 5 minutes ago, his biggest problem was deciding whether to order dessert he wouldn't eat. Now he was crouched in an alley, staring at two orphans who'd wrapped their dead brother in cloth because they had no one else to help them bury him properly. Who'd asked for his leftovers because begging was better than starving. Who smiled at each other between bites of cold steak like it was the best meal they'd ever tasted. Because it probably was. "Come with me." He stood abruptly, pulling out his phone. His driver answered on the first ring. "Marcus, I'm behind the cafe on Willow. Bring the car around." "Now." Kemi's eyes widened. "Sir, we didn't mean to." "You're not in trouble." Declan's hands shook as he pocketed his phone. "You're going to eat. Real food. Hot food. And then we're going to figure out what happens next." The black Mercedes pulled up 3 minutes later. Marcus took one look at the girls and didn't ask questions, just opened the back door and waited. Kemi climbed in first, still clutching the white cloth. Kaya followed, her small hand finding her sister's knee. Declan slid in beside them. "Jefferson Diner. The one on Park Avenue." Marcus nodded and pulled into traffic. The girls sat rigid against the leather seats, trying not to touch anything, like they might leave stains that couldn't be scrubbed out. Through the tinted windows, the city blurred past, glass towers reflecting afternoon sun, people in business suits checking phones, a woman walking 3 dogs that probably ate better than most children. Kemi pressed her face against the window. "Is this real?" Declan didn't answer. Couldn't answer, because he was asking himself the same question. 5 minutes ago, he'd been a different person. Someone who'd learned to ignore hunger that wasn't his own. Someone who'd built walls so high that empathy couldn't climb them. Raina's voice whispered in his memory. People with full plates shouldn't have empty hearts. The words the little girl had spoken. Almost exactly what his wife used to say, usually while dragging him to volunteer at shelters or stopping to help strangers whose cars had broken down. She believed in radical kindness, the kind that inconvenienced you, that cost something real, that left you vulnerable to disappointment. He'd buried that belief with her. Told himself it was safer to feel nothing than risk feeling everything. The diner appeared ahead, a vintage chrome building that served breakfast 24 hours a day and never asked questions about who sat in its booths. Marcus parked. Declan led the girls inside, past the curious stares of truckers and night shift workers just waking up, past the waitress who looked at the white cloth and quickly looked away. He slid into a corner booth. The girls sat across from him, their eyes tracking the menu like it was written in a foreign language. "Order whatever you want," Declan said. Kimmy bit her lip. "We don't have." "I know. Order anyway." They ordered pancakes, eggs, bacon, toast with 3 kinds of jam, orange juice in glasses so large they had to hold them with both hands. When the food arrived, they ate slowly at first, testing, waiting for someone to snatch it away. Then faster, remembering what real hunger felt like, what meant to have enough. Declan didn't touch his coffee. Just watched them eat. Watched Kaya carefully cut her pancakes into perfect squares. Watched Kimmy sneak bites to her sister when she thought no one was looking. Watched the white cloth rest on the seat between them, a ghost at their table. His phone buzzed. A text from his assistant. "Board meeting in 20 minutes. They're waiting." He turned the phone face down. The girls finished eating. Kaya's eyes grew heavy, her head drooping toward her sister's shoulder. Kimmy tried to stay alert, but exhaustion pulled at her too, the kind that came from days without safety, without rest, without knowing where the next meal would come from. "Sleep," Declan said quietly. "It's okay." They curled together on the booth seat, small bodies fitting into spaces too small for comfort, but somehow making it work. Within minutes, their breathing deepened. Synchronized. 2 halves of the same broken whole. Declan sat across from them, his perfect white suit stark against the diner's worn vinyl. Outside, the sun dropped lower, painting the windows gold. Somewhere in the city, his son Noel was coming home from private school to an empty house, greeted by a nanny who'd leave before dinner. Somewhere, men in boardrooms were checking watches and muttering about his absence. Somewhere, his life was continuing without him. He didn't move. The waitress refilled his coffee without asking, slid the check across the table. Declan glanced at it. $47 for a meal that might be the only thing keeping 2 children alive. He left $500. The white cloth shifted slightly as Kaya breathed. In sleep, her hand had loosened its grip, and the fabric fell open just enough for Declan to see what lay inside. A hospital bracelet. Too small for an adult. A name written in faded ink. A date from 3 months ago. They'd been carrying their brother for 3 months. Declan pressed his palms against his eyes. His shoulders shook. No sound came out, but his chest heaved with something he'd locked away for 4 years. Grief. Rage. Guilt. The terrible realization that he'd become exactly the kind of man he used to despise. The kind who looked at suffering and chose comfort instead. When he finally lowered his hands, the girls were still sleeping. Safe. Federal warm. But what happened when they woke up? For years earlier, Declan Rourke had been a different man. Not rich. Not powerful. Just a construction foreman with calloused hands and a wife who laughed at his terrible jokes. They'd lived in a 2-bedroom apartment where the heating barely worked, where Noel's crib sat in the corner of their bedroom, where happiness fit into spaces too small for anyone else to notice. Raina had worked nights as a nurse. Declan worked days, pouring foundations for buildings he'd never afford to enter. They met in the middle, stolen hours over breakfast, Noel babbling between them. Plans whispered about someday buying a house with a backyard. Then a drunk kid in his father's Mercedes ran a red light at midnight. The police said she died instantly. Like that was supposed to be a comfort. Like instant meant painless. Like knowing she hadn't suffered would somehow make the emptiness in their bed less absolute. The driver, 22, already with 2 DUIs his father's lawyers had made disappear, walked away with a suspended license and community service. Walked away while Raina went into the ground. Walked away because justice bent for money the same way physics bent for gravity. Something in Declan calcified after that. Hardened. He'd held Noel at the funeral, 2 years old and confused why mommy wouldn't wake up, and made a decision. Money protected people. Money built walls. Money meant his son would never be vulnerable the way Reina had been. Just another working-class body on the wrong road at the wrong time. He worked 16-hour days, took classes at night, learned development, finance, zoning laws, borrowed everything he could, risked everything he had, and bought his first property, a condemned building downtown that everyone said was worthless. He proved them wrong. Within 2 years, he flipped it for triple the investment, bought 3 more, then 10, then stopped counting. By year 4, Declan Rourke was the name investors whispered when they wanted a sure thing. The man who turned rot into gold. The golden redeveloper. He moved Noelle into a house with marble floors and rooms they'd never use. Hired the best nanny money could buy. Enrolled him in private school, where tuition cost more than Declan used to make in a year. Gave him everything, except the one thing that mattered. Noelle grew up in silence. Not the peaceful kind, the heavy kind that pressed down on small shoulders until children learned to carry weight they couldn't name. He stopped asking when Daddy would be home. Stopped expecting bedtime stories. Stopped expecting anything except empty rooms and expensive toys he played with alone. Declan told himself it was enough. That providing was love. That someday Noelle would understand why his father worked so hard, why money mattered more than time, why safety required distance. But sitting in that diner, watching 2 orphans sleep with their dead brother between them, Declan finally saw the truth. He hadn't protected Noelle. He'd abandoned him, just in a different way. The white suit suddenly felt like a costume. The watch on his wrist, $20,000 of Swiss engineering, ticked away seconds he'd never get back. The car outside, the house waiting across town, the empire he'd built from grief and rage, all of it was just elaborate insulation from the thing he feared most. Feeling. His phone buzzed again. Then again. Messages piling up, each one more urgent than the last. The board. His lawyer. Marcus asking what to do with his schedule. The world demanding he return to the life he'd constructed. Declan silenced it. Kemi stirred first, her eyes blinking open slowly, taking a moment to remember where she was. She sat up carefully, trying not to wake her sister. Saw Declan still sitting across from them. Her expression flickered, surprised that he'd stayed, caution about what came next. Sir, her voice was soft, testing. Thank you for the food. Don't call me sir. The words came out rougher than intended. Declan cleared his throat. My name's Declan. Okay, Mr. Declan. Close enough. Kaya woke next, her hand immediately reaching for the white cloth. Finding it. Relaxing. She looked at Declan with those 2 knowing eyes, and he wondered what she saw, a rich man playing charity for an afternoon, or something else. Something broken recognizing broken. What happens now? Kemi asked. The question every child in crisis learned to ask. The one that determined whether today's kindness lasted past sunset. Declan didn't have an answer. Couldn't promise what came next because he didn't know. Social services. Foster care. The system that chewed up kids like them and spit out statistics. He'd write a check, make some calls, and they'd disappear into bureaucracy while he returned to his life of expensive meals he didn't eat. That's what the old Declan would do. The one from this morning. The one who'd built walls so high that suffering couldn't reach him. But something had shifted in that alley. When Kaya had offered to share. When Kemi had spoken words that sounded like Reina's ghost. When he'd seen himself reflected in their brokenness and realized he'd spent 4 years teaching his son that love was something you bought instead of something you built. I don't know, he said finally. Honestly, but you're not going back to wherever you've been sleeping. Not tonight. Kemi's eyes widened. We can't. We're not asking for her. I know. I'm offering anyway. They left the diner as the sun dropped below the skyline. Marcus drove them through streets that transitioned from commercial to residential to the kind of neighborhood where gates had gates and security cameras watched security cameras. The girls pressed their faces against the windows, watching the city transform into something unrecognizable. The house appeared ahead, all glass and steel and architectural statements that looked impressive in magazines and felt hollow in person. Marcus pulled into the circular drive. The girls climbed out slowly, next craning to take in the three-story monument to success that somehow felt smaller than the two-bedroom apartment Declan used to call home. Inside, everything was white. White walls, white furniture, white flowers, and white vases that a service came to replace weekly. Clean, sterile, perfect, dead. Noel stood at the top of the stairs. 8 years old now, wearing his school uniform, his backpack still on his shoulders like he'd just gotten home and hadn't bothered to set it down because there was no one to come home to. He stared at the girls, at his father, at the scene that didn't make sense. Dad! His voice echoed in the vast entryway. Who are they? Declan looked at his son, really looked at him, saw the careful distance in his posture, the way he held himself like someone perpetually ready to be disappointed. Saw himself in those guarded eyes. Their names are Kimmy and Kaya, Declan said. They're going to stay with us for a while. Why? It was the right question, the one that deserved an honest answer. The one Declan should have asked himself 4 years ago before he chose empire over connection. Because sometimes, Declan said slowly, the words feeling their way forward, the people who need help the most are the ones who can help us remember who we're supposed to be. Noel didn't understand. How could he? He was 8. But something in his father's voice, something unfamiliar, something almost like emotion, made him nod. The nanny appeared from the kitchen, professionally concerned. Mr. Rourke, I wasn't informed we'd be having. That's fine, Denise. I'll take it from here. She blinked. In 4 years, Declan had never dismissed her early, never taken responsibility for anything beyond signing checks. She looked at the girls, at Noel still frozen on the stairs, at her employer who suddenly seemed like a stranger. Of course, sir. She gathered her things and left, probably already composing her resignation letter. Declan led the girls upstairs, showed them to the guest room that had never held guests, just furniture staged for potential buyers who never came. The bed was large enough for both of them. The bathroom had towels no one had ever used. The closet held clothes his decorator had purchased for visual warmth that had never been worn. You can shower, he said. Get clean. I'll find you something to wear. Kimmy hesitated at the doorway. Mr. Declan? We don't have anywhere else to go after tonight. The confession hung between them. Raw, vulnerable. The truth children hated admitting because it made the world too big and themselves too small. I know, Declan said. We'll figure it out. Together. It wasn't a promise. Just a commitment to try. To not turn away. To remember that people with full plates shouldn't have empty hearts. He closed the door behind him, stood in the hallway, listening to the sound of water running, of 2 little girls experiencing warmth and safety for the first time in months. Noel appeared beside him, still wearing his backpack. Dad, smaller now, uncertain. Are you okay? When was the last time his son had asked him that? When was the last time anyone had? No, Declan said, but I'm trying to be. They stood together in the 2-white hallway of their 2-big house, father and son, both learning that wealth meant nothing if it insulated you from everyone who needed you. But in his pocket, Declan's phone continued buzzing. Messages. Calls. The world he'd built demanding his attention. And tomorrow morning, reality would return. Social services, legal obligations, questions he couldn't answer. Tonight, though, 2 little girls were warm, federal safe. And somehow, that felt like the most important thing Declan Rourke had accomplished in 4 years. But what happened when the system came knocking? The cafe returned uninvited. Not the real one, the one in his head, the one that played on repeat every time Declan closed his eyes. The violin music, the untouched steak, the way those men in suits had laughed. Teach them early. Beg today, steal tomorrow. He'd heard that tone before, knew it intimately. It was the same tone the detective used when explaining why Raina's case would go nowhere. The same tone the lawyer used when advising him not to pursue civil action because these things rarely end well for people like you. The same tone that said some lives mattered and some didn't, and money determined which category you fell into. Now, standing in his kitchen at midnight, watching coffee drip into a mug he wouldn't drink, Declan finally understood what had broken in that alley. Not his composure, not his carefully constructed indifference. His illusion, the fantasy that becoming wealthy meant escaping the cruelty he'd witnessed. That money made you different. Better. Safe. But those men at the cafe were wealthy too. Probably went home to nice houses, kissed their kids goodnight, donated to charities that let them write off compassion on their taxes. And still, they looked at two hungry children and seen criminals in training instead of human beings. He'd almost done the same thing. Upstairs, the house was finally quiet. The girls had showered, eaten again, Denise's leftover lasagna heated in the microwave, and fallen asleep in the guest room with a white cloth tucked between them. Noel had watched from his doorway, fascinated and confused, before Declan tucked him in with a story he'd forgotten how to tell halfway through. "Dad," Noel had whispered in the darkness. "Is this what Mom would have wanted?" The question knocked the air from Declan's lungs. Because yes, God yes, Raina would have brought those girls home without hesitation. Would have fed them, clothed them, fought the entire foster system with her bare hands to keep them safe. Would have reminded Declan that their expensive house meant nothing if it couldn't shelter people who needed it. "Yeah, buddy," he'd managed. "I think it is." Now, coffee cooling beside him, Declan pulled out his phone. 17 missed calls, 32 texts, an email from his lawyer with the subject line, "Urgent, call me." He ignored all of them. Instead, he opened his browser. Typed, "What to do if you find orphan children." The results were overwhelming. Legal obligations, mandatory reporting, child protective services, foster care systems, statistics about how many kids aged out without ever finding permanent homes, warnings about Good Samaritan laws and liability and well-meaning people who made things worse. He closed the browser. Tomorrow's problems could wait for tomorrow. Tonight, 2 little girls were sleeping in a bed instead of a street. Tonight, his son had seen him do something that wasn't related to profit margins or property development. Tonight, he'd done something Raina would recognize. The coffee had gone cold. He poured it down the sink and headed upstairs. The guest room door was cracked open. He paused, listening to their breathing, deep, steady, the kind of sleep that only came after days of running on fumes. Kemi had her arm around Kaya. Kaya had her hand on the white cloth. 2 survivors learning to trust that morning might actually come. Declan pulled the door shut quietly. His own bedroom felt too large, too empty. The bed Raina had never slept in because he'd bought this house after she died, bought it with money made from grief and rage and the desperate need to control something when everything else had spun out of reach. He lay on top of the covers, still dressed, staring at the ceiling. The house creaked around him. Somewhere in the walls, pipes settled. Outside, a car passed. Normal sounds. Domestic sounds. The kind he'd stopped noticing years ago when this place became a museum instead of a home. His phone lit up on the nightstand. A call from Gerard, his business partner. Declan let it ring out. Then a text. "Where the hell are you?" Meeting with the Peterson Group got pushed. "They're threatening to walk. Call me back." The Peterson Group, right? The development deal they'd been negotiating for 6 months. Luxury condos on the waterfront. 10 million in projected profits. The kind of deal that defined careers. Declan typed, "Handle it." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. "What? Handle it. I'm busy." Busy with what? "This deal is everything we've been working toward." Declan stared at the message. Everything we've been working toward. 6 months of proposals and counteroffers and schmoozing investors who smelled like cigar smoke and entitlement. 6 months of pretending luxury condos mattered more than anything else. 6 months of building towers while ignoring the people sleeping in their shadows. Not everything, he typed. Not anymore. He silenced his phone and rolled onto his side. Sleep came eventually, but it brought dreams. Raina standing in their old apartment, Noel on her hip, laughing about something he couldn't remember. Then the scene shifted. The hospital, her body under a white sheet, a doctor apologizing like words could bridge the gap between alive and dead. Then the alley, but this time the girls looked like Noel, and the white cloth held Raina, and Declan was the one in the expensive suit walking away while they starved. He woke gasping. Dawn light filtered through the blinds. His phone showed 34 notifications. He turned it face down. Downstairs, he heard movement. Small footsteps. The refrigerator opening. voices whispering about whether it was okay to take food without asking. Declan pulled on a shirt and headed down. Found them in the kitchen. Kimmy standing on a chair to reach the cabinet. Kaya watching from the doorway like a lookout. Both of them frozen when they saw him. "Good morning," he said. They stared, waiting for the explosion. The accusation. The reminder that nothing was free, that even kindness had limits. "You can eat whatever you want," Declan said. "You don't have to ask. This is your home now." The word surprised him as much as them. Because he'd said home, not house, not place you're staying temporarily. Home. Kimmy climbed down from the chair. "For how long? I don't know, but we'll figure it out. What about the police?" Kaya spoke softly, her eyes fixed on the floor. "They take kids like us. Kids like us. Children who'd learned early that the system didn't protect everyone equally. That poverty looked like guilt to people with power. That sometimes safety meant staying invisible. No one's taking you anywhere," Declan said. The conviction in his voice surprised him. "Not if I can help it." It was a reckless promise. Probably impossible. Definitely complicated. But watching their shoulders unknot slightly, seeing Kimmy's chin lift, hearing Kaya's small exhale of relief, it felt more important than any business deal he'd ever closed. Noel appeared in the doorway, rumpled and half awake. He looked at the girls, at his father, at the scene that still didn't make sense, but somehow felt more real than anything that had happened in this house before. "Can I have breakfast too?" he asked quietly. Declan smiled. Actually smiled. "Yeah, buddy. Let's all eat." They made pancakes together. Badly. The kitchen became chaos. Flour everywhere, eggshells in the batter. Smoke from the burner turned up too high. The smoke detector went off twice. Kaya giggled. Noel laughed. Kimmy carefully flipped pancakes that refused to hold their shape. Declan stood at the stove, spatula in hand, and felt something he'd forgotten existed. Joy. Then the doorbell rang. Everyone froze. Declan's stomach dropped. It was too early for deliveries. Too early for neighbors. And only one type of visitor showed up unannounced at dawn. He walked to the front door slowly, his mind racing through possibilities. Social services already? Someone from the cafe who'd reported them? Police following up on missing children? He opened the door. Two women stood on his porch, one in a business suit holding a tablet, the other in jeans and a jacket that said Child Protective Services across the back. "Mr. Rourke?" The woman with the tablet spoke first. "I'm Sarah Chun from the Department of Children and Family Services. We received a report about 2 unaccompanied minors at your residence. May we come in?" What could he possibly say that wouldn't make everything worse? Declan's hand tightened on the doorframe. Behind him, the kitchen had gone silent. The laughter cut off like someone had severed a wire. He could feel the girl's fear radiating from 30 feet away, seeping through walls and good intentions and the naive belief that one night of safety meant anything permanent. "Who called you?" His voice came out level, controlled. The businessman's mask sliding back into place even as his heart hammered against his ribs. Sarah Chin's expression stayed neutral. Professional. The kind of neutral that came from years of walking into situations where everyone lied. "That's confidential. May we come in?" Every instinct screamed at him to say no, to close the door, to call his lawyer, to protect what little ground he'd gained in the last 12 hours. But the woman in the CPS jacket was already looking past him into the house, her eyes tracking movement in the kitchen, cataloging evidence, building a case he couldn't see yet. He stepped aside. "Come in." They entered like investigators at a crime scene, taking in the marble floors, the expensive furniture, the evidence of wealth that should have eliminated any question about his ability to provide care. But Declan had spent enough time in rooms with people who made decisions about other people's lives to know that money didn't automatically equal trust. Sometimes it bred suspicion instead. "The children?" Sarah asked. "Kitchen. Having breakfast." They walked through the too-white living room into the kitchen where Noel stood frozen by the stove, spatula still in hand. Kimmy and Kaya had backed into the corner, the white cloth visible now, clutched between them like a shield that might ward off what came next. Sarah's partner, the woman whose jacket announced her power, crouched down slowly, putting herself at eye level with the girls. "Hi there. I'm Officer Latrice Washington. I'm here to make sure you're okay. Can you tell me your names?" "Kimi ist Josit." Kaya said nothing, her eyes finding Declan's across the room, asking a question he couldn't answer. "Will you fight for us?" "Their names are Kimi and Kaya," Declan said. "They needed help. I helped them." Sarah turned to face him. "And their last name?" He didn't know it. Hadn't thought to ask. Hadn't thought past feeding them, sheltering them, giving them one night where survival didn't require begging. "I don't know," he admitted. "What about their parents? Legal guardians?" "Dead. Their mother died last week. They've been on the street since." Sarah's fingers moved across her tablet, typing notes that would become part of a file that would follow these children for years. Every word he said could help them or condemn them, and he had no way of knowing which. "Mr. Rourke, I appreciate what you're trying to do here," Sarah said carefully. "But there's a process for situations like this. We need to verify the children's identities, locate any living relatives, assess placement options. They're staying here." The words came out harder than intended. Declan forced himself to breathe. "I understand this is emotional," Sarah continued, her voice maddeningly calm. "But you can't just take in children without going through proper channels. There are background checks, home studies, legal documentation. Then start the process." Declan moved closer, positioning himself between the social workers and the girls. "Whatever paperwork you need, whatever hoops I have to jump through, start it. Today." But they're not leaving. Officer Washington stood slowly, her hand resting on a radio. The gesture was subtle but deliberate, a reminder that authority backed her words. "Sir, that's not how this works. These children need immediate placement in the system while we investigate." "The system?" Declan's voice rose despite himself. "You mean foster care? Splitting them up because there aren't enough homes that take siblings? Shuffling them between strangers who get paid by the state while you investigate relatives who didn't care enough to look for them when their mother died?" Sarah's expression hardened. "Mr. Rourke, how long?" He cut her off. "How long have they been on the street? Days? Weeks? Where was the system then? Where were you when they were sleeping in alleys and begging for scraps?" The kitchen crackled with tension. Noel had set down the spatula, his eyes wide, watching his father become someone unrecognizable. The girls hadn't moved, barely breathing. Two small statues waiting for the verdict that would determine whether yesterday's miracle lasted past breakfast. "We can't act on situations we don't know about," Sarah said tightly. "Someone reported them to us last night. We're here now. And right now, these children need to be placed in approved care while we sort this out." "No." Declan's hands clenched at his sides. "They need stability. They need people who actually give a damn whether they eat or sleep safely," or his voice cracked. He swallowed hard. "They need what every child deserves. And I can provide that." "Can you?" Officer Washington's question came softer, but cut deeper. "You're a single father. You work, what? 60, 70 hours a week? Development, right? High stress, travel heavy? Who's going to care for them when you're at the office? When you're closing deals? When the novelty of playing hero wears off?" The words hit like physical blows because they were the same questions Declan had been asking himself all night. The same doubts that whispered he was making promises he couldn't keep. That good intentions didn't equal good parenting. That these girls deserved better than another adult who'd eventually choose work over them. But then Kaya's voice cut through the silence, small, steady, terrifying in its honesty. He stayed. Everyone turned. She was looking at Declan, her hands still gripping the white cloth. "Yesterday, at the diner, we fell asleep, and when we woke up, he was still there. Nobody ever stays." The simple truth of it gutted him. How low had the bar fallen that not abandoning children while they slept counted as exceptional? How broken was the world they lived in? Sarah's expression flickered, something almost like sympathy breaking through the professional distance. But her tablet was still recording. The system was still churning. And Declan could see her making calculations about risk management, liability, procedure. "Mr. Rourke," she said finally, "I believe you want to help. I do. But wanting isn't enough. These girls have been through trauma. They need specialized care, therapy, stability. which I can provide. He was pleading now and didn't care. I have resources. I can hire therapists, tutors, whatever they need. I can. You can't buy your way through this. Officer Washington's words weren't cruel, just factual. Money doesn't replace the vetting process. We need to know you're capable of long-term care, that you understand what you're taking on, that you won't change your mind when it gets hard. I won't. Everyone says that. Then reality hits, sleepless nights, behavioral issues, attachment problems. These aren't pets, Mr. Rourke. They're traumatized children who've lost everything. I know. Declan's voice dropped. I know exactly what they've lost because I lost it too. My wife died 4 years ago. Drunk driver. Rich kid whose father made it disappear. I know what it feels like when the system fails you. When money matters more than justice. When the people who are supposed to protect, you choose convenience instead. The kitchen went quiet. Sarah stopped typing. Officer Washington's hand dropped from her radio. So no, Declan continued. I'm not some rich guy looking for a tax write-off or a feel-good story. I'm a father who forgot how to be present for his own son because I was too busy building walls. And yesterday, 2 little girls reminded me what my wife spent her whole life trying to teach me. That wealth means nothing if you use it to insulate yourself from everyone who needs you. He turned to look at Kemi and Kaya. At Noel standing beside them now. No longer separate, but somehow part of their small, frightened unit. 3 children who'd all lost mothers. 3 children who deserved better than what life had given them. I can't promise I'll be perfect, Declan said. I'll probably screw up 100 times. But I can promise I'll try. That I'll show up. That I won't abandon them because it's inconvenient or hard. And that's more than they've gotten from anyone else. Sarah and Officer Washington exchanged glances, some silent communication born from years of partnership. Finally, Sarah sighed. Here's what I can do, she said slowly. I can file this as an emergency kinship placement while we investigate. That gives you 72 hours. During that time, we'll run background checks, verify the girl's information, contact any potential relatives. If everything checks out and you're serious about this, we can start the process for formal foster placement with the goal of adoption. And if I'm not, Declan asked, if you decide I'm not suitable, then they go into the system. And yes, they might be separated. Siblings often are, especially twins their age. There aren't enough homes. She didn't apologize for the reality, just stated it. 72 hours. 3 days to prove he wasn't just another well-meaning failure. 3 days before the girls learned that yesterday's safety was temporary. 3 days to figure out how to be the man Raina had believed he could be. What do you need from me? He asked. Sarah pulled out a stack of forms. Signatures, personal information, contact details for character references. And Mr. Rourke, don't screw this up, because if you do, those girls pay the price. He took the pen, started signing. Behind him, he heard Kemi whisper to her sister, "We get to stay?" Kaya's response was barely audible for 3 days. 3 days, 72 hours. For 1,320 minutes to transform from a man who ate alone at expensive cafes to someone capable of being a father to 3 children who'd all learned too early that adults couldn't be trusted. Officer Washington crouched down again, her voice gentle now. "Girls, we need to ask you some questions. About your mom. About where you've been staying. About," she paused, looking at the white cloth. "About your brother." Kemi's grip tightened. "Do we have to?" "Yes. But Mr. Rourke can stay if you want." They nodded, slowly, reluctantly. For the next hour, Declan watched them tell their story. Watched Kemi explain how their mother had been sick for months, how they'd begged her to go to the hospital, but she said they couldn't afford it. Watched Kaya describe waking up one morning and their mother wouldn't respond, wouldn't breathe, wouldn't wake up no matter how much they shook her. Watched them both cry when Officer Washington gently asked about the white cloth, about their baby brother who'd been stillborn 3 months earlier, who their mother had held for one day before the hospital took him away, who they'd promised to carry with them because nobody should be forgotten. Declan's throat burned. His eyes stung. Across the kitchen, Noel was crying openly, not bothering to hide it. Sarah typed everything, documenting trauma like data points, building a case file that would follow these children forever. When it was finally over, Officer Washington handed Declan a card. "We'll be in touch. Probably tomorrow." In the meantime, she looked at the girls. "You're safe here. Understand? Mr. Rourke is going to take care of you. And if anything feels wrong, you call that number." They nodded, exhausted from reliving nightmares. The social workers left. The house fell silent except for the smoke detector battery chirping somewhere upstairs. A reminder that nothing in this place had been properly maintained because Declan had been too busy building empires to notice his own home was falling apart. Kimmy broke the silence first. "Mr. Declan, what happens after 3 days?" He crouched down, meeting her eyes. "I don't know, but I'm going to fight like hell to make sure you stay." "What?" Kaya asked. "You don't even know us." It was the right question, the one that demanded honesty. The one that would reveal whether his motivations were solid or just another rich man's savior complex. "Because yesterday," Declan said slowly, "you reminded me of something I forgot. That the world breaks people who can't fight back. That money and success mean nothing if you use them to look away. And that my wife didn't die, so I could become the kind of man she would have been ashamed to know." He stood, looking at all 3 children, his son and 2 strangers who somehow already felt like family. "So here's what's going to happen. Today, we're going to get you real clothes, school supplies, whatever you need. Tomorrow, I'm calling my lawyer to start the formal adoption process. And every day after that, we're going to figure this out together. All of us. What about your work?" Noel asked quietly. "The meetings? The people who keep calling?" Declan looked at his son, really looked at him, and saw a child who'd spent 4 years wondering if he mattered more than spreadsheets. "They can wait," Declan said. "They've waited before. They'll wait again." His phone buzzed in his pocket. Probably Gerard. Probably the Peterson Group. Probably the Empire demanding tribute. He pulled it out and turned it off completely. "Come on," he said. "Let's go shopping. And then we're going to do something I haven't done in 4 years." "What?" Kimmy asked. "Spend a whole day just being a family." They piled into the Mercedes, 3 kids in the back, Declan driving because Marcus had the day off, and maybe it was time he remembered how to navigate his own city. The girls pressed their faces against the windows, watching the world transform from wealthy neighborhoods to commercial districts to the mall, where Declan hadn't set foot in years. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Families wandered between stores. Teenagers clustered near the food court. Normal people doing normal things while Declan Rourke, the golden redeveloper, held hands with 2 little girls who'd never owned clothes without stains. They bought everything, dresses and pants and shoes that fit, backpacks covered in cartoon characters, school supplies they'd need when they enrolled. Noel picked out matching bracelets for the twins, insisting they needed something to remember today. Kaya found a picture frame and asked, very quietly, if they could put her brother's hospital photo in it. Declan bought the frame, and a box to keep the white cloth in, and whatever else they wanted, because money, for once, was doing something useful. They ate lunch at the food court, pizza and French fries and ice cream they didn't finish. They laughed at Noel's terrible jokes. They watched Kimmy try on 17 pairs of shoes before finding the perfect ones. They let Kaya hold the white cloth the entire time because some things couldn't be rushed. And for one afternoon, Declan forgot about the ticking clock. Forgot about the social workers who'd return tomorrow with questions he might not be able to answer. Forgot about the system that could rip this fragile piece apart. For one afternoon, he was just a father with 3 kids who needed him. But as the sun dropped lower and they drove home through streets painted gold, Declan's mind was already racing ahead. Background checks, home studies, references. He needed his lawyer, needed character witnesses, needed to prove in 72 hours what most people got months to demonstrate. He needed a miracle, or he needed to become the kind of man who deserved one. Back home, the girls explored their room like archaeologists discovering treasure. Noel showed them his game collection, his books, his prized rock collection from a phase he'd outgrown but couldn't throw away. Laughter echoed through halls that had known only silence. Declan stood in the doorway, watching. His phone sat on the counter downstairs, still powered off. His business was probably in chaos. Gerard had probably had an aneurysm. The Peterson group had probably walked. He didn't care. For the first time in 4 years, he was exactly where he needed to be. But tomorrow, reality would return. And Declan had no idea if good intentions would be enough, or if 3 days was even close to enough time to prove that broken men could learn to build something other than walls. The lawyer's office felt like a tomb. Mitchell Green spread documents across mahogany, adoption petitions, background checks, financial statements that proved Declan could afford 3 children but couldn't explain why he wanted them. 36 hours, Mitchell said. That's what you have left to prove you're suitable. Declan's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Gerard calling. Investors panicking. The Peterson deal collapsing in real time. $10 million evaporating because he'd chosen breakfast with orphans over boardroom negotiations. I need character references, Mitchell continued. People who can vouch for your parenting. Declan's mind went blank. For years of empire building had left him wealthy and friendless. Business partners who knew his profit margins, but not his son's birthday. Associates who'd shake hands and forget his face. Gerard, Declan offered weakly. Your business partner who's calling you insane. Mitchell closed his laptop. We need better. They work past midnight. Form stacked higher. Emergency psych evaluation scheduled for dawn. Declan provided bank statements, property records, proof he could financially support an expanded family. The numbers impressed. The personal connections didn't exist. His phone lit up. Gerard's text. Peterson walked. We're ruined. Call me. Declan typed back. Handle it. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Then, you're having a breakdown. Maybe he was. Maybe sanity meant recognizing that 4 years of success had built nothing but expensive loneliness. At home, 3 children waited up, refused sleep until he returned. They sat together on the white couch, Noel between the twins, fighting exhaustion, choosing presence over rest. Did it work? Kimmy asked when he entered. I don't know yet. When will you know? Tomorrow. Maybe. Kaya's hand found the white cloth bundle. What if they say no? Declan knelt before them. I level. Honest. Then I fight harder. I don't stop until you're safe. Why? Noel's question came soft. Confused. Why do they matter so much when I didn't? The words shattered something. Declan pulled his son close. Actually hugged him, held him, let himself feel 4 years of failure and a desperate hope for redemption. You always mattered, Declan whispered. I just forgot how to show it. They fell asleep together. 3 children on one couch. Declan on the floor beside them. His phone buzzed until the battery died. Tomorrow, social services returned. Tomorrow, he'd face questions he still couldn't answer. Tomorrow, reality would decide if good intentions outweighed terrible odds. But tonight they were family. Fragile. Temporary. Real. Is 36 hours enough to prove you deserve redemption? Drop your thoughts below and subscribe. Tomorrow's chapter reveals whether the system chooses love or protocol. Dr. Patricia Morrison's office had no windows. Deliberate, probably. Nothing to distract from the examination of broken people trying to prove they'd healed. Why adoption? Patricia's pen hovered. Why now? Because walking away would make me someone I couldn't live with. Many people walk away. What made these children different? Declan's throat tightened. They reminded me of my wife. The way she used to see people, not as problems to avoid, but humans to help. Patricia wrote something. Your wife died 4 years ago. You spent those years building an empire. Now you're dismantling it for children you've known 2 weeks. Explain that. I can't. Not rationally. Try. I thought success meant safety. That money would protect my son from the cruelty that killed his mother. But it just made me cruel differently. I provided everything except what mattered. Presence. And these girls fixed that. They exposed it. They forced me to confront who I became. Patricia leaned forward. Mr. Rourke, children aren't therapy. They're humans who need consistency, emotional availability, trauma-informed care. Can you provide that while running a business that's currently imploding? I'm restructuring, delegating, cutting my hours by 70%. 70% less income? I have enough. More than enough. Money isn't the question. Sustainability is. She handed him a folder. I'm recommending conditional approval with mandatory therapy, weekly check-ins, any regression, and I'll recommend removal. This isn't a feel-good story. This is 3 children whose lives depend on you becoming someone you've never been. Back home, chaos waited. The girl's room looked demolished. Noelle stood bleeding, hand cut from catching the white cloth frame as it fell. Kaya hyperventilating. Kemi frozen. Blood means death, Kaya sobbed. Blood means gone. Declan wrapped her in his arms. Let her soak his shirt with trauma that logic couldn't touch. Bandaged Noelle's hand. Clean broken glass while Kemi watched with hollow eyes. This was reality. Not heartwarming transformation. Just damage control and desperate love. His phone rang. Sarah Chun. Mr. Rourke, we've completed our investigation. I'm coming over. 1 hour. 60 minutes until verdict. He gathered the children. Explained without details. Watched Hope retreat behind walls built from disappointment. The doorbell rang. Sarah entered with Officer Washington. Both carrying tablets. Both unreadable. We're extending emergency placement to 30 days, Sarah announced. Weekly visits. Mandatory therapy. Proof of consistent care. Then we decide permanent placement. 30 days. Not forever. Not removal. 30 days to prove love mattered more than logic. After they left, Kaya wrapped small arms around Declan's waist. Then Kemi. Then Noelle. For broken people trying to build something whole. Outside, Declan's empire continued crumbling. Inside, he finally understood what mattered. His phone buzzed. Gerard again. Declan turned it off. 30 days to save 3 children. 30 days to become someone worth saving. The clock started now. Can 1 month erase 4 years of mistakes? Comment your answer and subscribe. Next chapter reveals whether redemption comes with an expiration date. Week 1 taught Declan that parenting wasn't a business plan. It was controlled chaos held together by exhausted love. Monday, Kaya checked every lock 5 times before sleeping. Trauma made her believe danger lived behind closed doors. Tuesday, Kemi stole food, hid crackers under her bed. When confronted, she went silent, eyes distant, remembering hunger that full pantries couldn't erase. Wednesday, Noel threw his tablet because homework was too hard and nobody cares anyway. For years of emotional neglect exploding in shattered glass. Thursday, Declan overslept. Up until 3 a.m. with Kaya's nightmares. Kids missed school. Sarah made notes during her visit. Friday, Gerard appeared unannounced. Demanded signatures on documents that couldn't wait. The girls hid upstairs, terrified strangers meant removal. By Saturday, Declan understood why people gave up. Coffee cold, body aching. The house that used to be silent now vibrated with constant need. 37 missed calls. Business collapsing. Clients leaving. Everything he'd built crumbling. And somehow, that didn't hurt like it should. Dad, Noelle appeared. Still in pajamas. Gerard said you're destroying your life. Children absorbed everything. The arguments. The stress. The fear this experiment would fail. Gerard thinks success means money, Declan said. I'm learning it means something else. What? Being someone the people you love can count on. They made breakfast together. Pancakes. Flour everywhere. Kaya giggling. Kemi sharing her mother's recipe without crying. Progress measured in moments. The doorbell interrupted. Mitchell stood there. Grim expression. Gerard filed a complaint with CPS. Claims you're mentally unstable. Requests a competency hearing. The world tilted. He's trying to take them away. He thinks he's saving you from yourself. CPS has to investigate. They could remove the girls immediately. Declan grabbed the railing. How do I fight this? Prove you're rational. That this isn't a breakdown. You have 1 week. The hearing's next Friday. Inside, laughter continued. Children oblivious to the grenade Gerard had thrown. Declan called his former partner. You betrayed me. I'm trying to save you, Gerard said. You're throwing away everything for kids you don't know. That's not stability. That's grief breaking you. They're not breaking me. They're saving me. Declan. He hung up. 1 week to prove loving broken children wasn't insanity. 7 days to demonstrate that sacrificing empire for family was clarity, not crisis. Kimmy stepped outside. Are we in trouble? No. The lie came easy. Necessary. She studied him. My mom used to say that right before things got worse. Declan crouched down. Someone's trying to make things difficult. But I promise I'm not giving up. Even if it costs everything. Even everything. Even then. That night, he built a defense. Financial projections. Therapy reports. Evidence the children were thriving. By dawn, he'd assembled documentation that looked impressive on paper. But paper didn't capture midnight comfort during nightmares. Didn't quantify Kimmy's slow thaw from survival mode to trust. Didn't measure Noelle's smile when Declan helped with homework instead of delegating. How did you prove love to people who measured worth in dollar signs? The hearing is in 6 days. Will the system choose love over logic? Drop your prediction below and subscribe. The final chapters determine if broken people can build unbreakable families. The courtroom smelled like old wood and crushed dreams. Declan sat beside Mitchell, watching people file in like witnesses to an execution. Sarah Chun, Officer Washington, Dr. Morrison, Gerard in the back, wouldn't meet his eyes. Judge Veronica Hartwell entered. Steel gray hair, expression that had seen every desperate parent's justification. This is a competency hearing regarding Declan Rourke's foster petition. Mr. Green, you filed a complaint? Gerard stood. Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Rourke is my business partner. I believe he's experiencing a mental health crisis, compromising his judgment. Basis. He met these children 2 weeks ago. Immediately abandoned our business. Ignored contracts. Lost millions. This behavior is erratic, impulsive, dangerous for everyone. Judge Hartwell looked at Declan. Response. Your Honor, I'm not having a breakdown. I'm having a breakthrough. For years building an empire that meant nothing because it was hollow. These children reminded me what matters. That's not insanity. That's clarity. Clarity that costs your business. The business is restructured, delegated. I maintain enough passive income to support my family comfortably. Financial projections are documented. Gerard interrupted. 2 weeks isn't enough time to know if you can parent traumatized children. He's projecting unresolved grief onto. My wife died 4 years ago, Declan cut in. I grieve badly, built walls, abandoned my son emotionally. These girls expose that. Forced accountability. That's not breakdown. That's growth. Judge Hartwell raised her hand. Dr. Morrison, your evaluation. Patricia stood. I've conducted 3 sessions, initially concerned about impulsivity. However, subsequent meetings revealed genuine insight, trauma-informed care, measurable progress. The children are bonding. Is he perfect? No. Stable enough for conditional placement? Yes. What about abandoning his career? Gerard challenged. That's reprioritization. Patricia countered. Parents reduce work commitments constantly. He's choosing family over empire. That's not pathology. Judge Hartwell looked at Sarah. CPS assessment. Weekly visits show safe environment, improved child effect, decreased anxiety, healthy attachment. I recommend continued placement with supervision. Relief flooded Declan. But Gerard approached with documents. Text messages, Your Honor. Mr. Rourke ignoring urgent matters. Missing critical meetings. Impaired judgment across all life areas. Judge Hartwell reviewed them. You missed 17 meetings in 2 weeks. Yes, because my children needed me more than investors did. Sentiment doesn't establish competence. She set down papers. Mr. Green, does Mr. Rourke's parenting affect your business or your ego? Gerard faltered. I'm worried about him. About these kids being emotional band-aids. Are they? Judge Hartwell looked at Declan. They're not therapy, Declan said quietly. They're responsibility. 3 humans who deserve a parent who shows up. Yes, loving them heals me. But I'm not using them. I'm learning from them. Judge Hartwell leaned back. I'm calling the children in. They deserve a voice. Bring in Kimmy Williams. Kimmy entered small and terrified. found Declan's eyes before sitting. Kimmy, I'm Judge Hartwell. You're not in trouble. How long have you lived with Mr. Rourke? 2 weeks. Do you like it there? Yes, ma'am. Why? Because he doesn't make us feel bad for needing things. And he stays, even when it's hard. Has it been hard? Sometimes. Kaya has nightmares. I get scared about food, but Mr. Declan doesn't yell. He just sits with us. Do you want to stay with him? Kimmy's voice cracked. More than anything, Judge Hartwell's expression softened. Thank you, Kimmy. You can go. Next, Kaya testified. Then Noel, 8 years old, explaining how his dad finally came home. Finally, Judge Hartwell spoke. Mr. Rourke, competency isn't about perfection. It's about capacity. Do you have capacity to parent 3 traumatized children while managing personal transformation? I do. Mr. Green, your concerns are noted but insufficient. This isn't breakdown, it's reprioritization. Dramatic, yes. Dangerous, no. She looked at the documents. I'm approving continued placement. 6-month probationary period. Monthly evaluations. Mandatory therapy. If Mr. Rourke demonstrates consistent care, I'll approve permanent adoption. Declan's knees nearly buckled. But understand, Judge Hartwell continued. One misstep, and these children return to the system. Don't fail them. I won't. Outside, Gerard waited. Declan, I'm sorry. You thought wrong. We're done. Professionally. Personally. All of it. Gerard nodded. Walked away. The girls ran to Declan. Noel too. For people holding each other like shipwreck survivors. 6 months to prove love conquered bureaucracy. 6 months to become the father they deserved. The battle wasn't over. But they'd won today. One more chapter remains. Will 6 months be enough? Subscribe and turn on notifications. The final chapter drops soon with a conclusion you won't see coming. 6 months later, Declan stood in the same courtroom. Different energy this time. No Gerard. No complaints. Just Sarah Chun holding a final report. Judge Hartwell reviewed documents. Monthly evaluations show consistent progress. The children are thriving academically, emotionally, socially. Family therapy reports indicate healthy attachment. Mr. Rourke has maintained reduced work hours, prioritized parenting, demonstrated sustainable lifestyle changes. She looked up. Any concerns, Ms. Chun? None, Your Honor. I recommend permanent adoption approval. Declan's chest tightened. 6 months of proving himself. Of midnight comfort and homework help and therapy sessions where they all cried together. Of learning that love wasn't a transaction, but a daily choice to show up. Mr. Rourke, Judge Hartwell said, you've transformed your life. Your children are evidence. I'm approving the adoption. Kimmy and Kaya Williams are now legally Kimmy and Kaya Rourke. The gavel fell. Declan couldn't breathe, couldn't process, just felt Mitchell's hand on his shoulder and heard his own voice saying thank you through tears. Outside, the girls waited with Noel. When Declan emerged, Kimmy read his face immediately. We're staying. Forever. You're officially Rourke's. Kaya burst into tears. Happy ones this time. Kimmy grabbed her sister, then Noel, then Declan. All 4 of them crying in the courthouse hallway while strangers walked past. Can we go home now? Kaya asked. Home. Not your house. Home. Yes, sweetheart. Let's go home. They celebrated at the diner where it started. Same booth. Different circumstances. The girls ordered everything. Pancakes, eggs, bacon, French fries. Noel got a milkshake. Declan got coffee he actually drank. Dad, Noel asked between bites. What happened to your business? The one with Gerard. I sold my share. Invested in smaller projects I can manage remotely. We have enough. More than enough. Do you miss it? Sometimes. But I don't miss who I was when I had it. Kimmy reached across the table. Took Declan's hand. Our mom said people with full plates shouldn't have empty hearts. She was right. That evening, they hung new family photos. For people smiling. The white cloth sat on the mantel in its frame, honored, remembered part of their story. Noel showed his sisters his rock collection, explained each one's origin. They pretended to care because that's what siblings did. Declan watched from the doorway. The 2 white house finally felt lived in. Warm. Real. His phone buzzed. A text from Mitchell. Congratulations. You did it. He'd done it. Transformed from the golden redeveloper into just a father. Traded empire for breakfast chaos. Exchanged profit margins for parent-teacher conferences. And somehow, impossibly, he was happier than he'd been in years. That night, tucking in the girls, Kaya asked quietly, "Do you think our mom would be proud? I think she'd be grateful you found someone who doesn't give up. Do you think your wife will be proud?" Declan's throat closed. He looked at the picture of Raina on the nightstand, the one he'd finally moved from storage. "Yeah," he whispered. "I think she'd say, I finally figured out what matters." Downstairs, he found Noel waiting. "Dad, can we talk?" They sat together, father and son. "I was scared when the girls came," Noel admitted. "Scared you'd love them more than me. Never. You're my son. Nothing changes that. But now I have sisters. Real sisters." "You do." Noel smiled. "I like it, being part of something bigger." Later, alone in his room, Declan pulled out the box of letters Raina had written during their marriage. Little notes she'd left in his lunch. Reminders that success meant nothing without connection. One letter stood out. "When everything feels broken, remember, people with full plates shouldn't have empty hearts. Feed others. Stay human." He'd forgotten. For 4 years, he'd forgotten. But 2 little girls in an alley had reminded him. Had cracked open walls grief had built. Had shown him that wealth without love was just expensive loneliness. Declan folded the letter, put away, walked downstairs to the living room where his children, all 3 of them, had fallen asleep watching a movie. He covered them with blankets, turned off the TV, sat watching them breathe. This was success. Not money, not empire, not golden nicknames. 3 children safe, loved, home. His phone showed one unread message. "Gerard, I was wrong. I'm sorry." Declan deleted it. Some bridges stayed burned. Some betrayals couldn't be undone. But forgiveness could still happen. Just not today. Outside, the city continued. Buildings rose. Businesses opened. The world spun forward, indifferent to one man's transformation. But inside this house, this home, for broken people had built something unbreakable. Declan closed his eyes, finally at peace. Because people with full plates shouldn't have empty hearts. And his heart was finally, beautifully, overwhelmingly full. The end.